Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webcast entitled Empowering Data-Driven PR Leaders of Tomorrow. Today's conversation is brought to you by Air PR and powered by Onstream Media. To submit a question or comment at any time during the webinar, please click on the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen. Simply type your message into the box and click on the Submit button. Alternatively, you can submit your question via Twitter using the hashtag AskAirPR. All questions will be answered at the end of today's presentation. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to your host, Rebecca Iliff, Chief Strategy Officer at Air PR. Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mike, and also a quick thank you to ComPro and Onstream Media. We appreciate you putting this together for us this morning. As Mike mentioned, I am currently the Chief Strategy Officer at Air PR. And for those of you that don't know Air PR or haven't heard about us, we are a PR technology platform. Essentially what that means is we offer PR measurement and reporting and analytics solutions for mostly Fortune 1000 companies at this point, but also fast-growing technology companies. And we are so excited to be involved in the conversation about measurement and how the industry is really evolving and making that a central part of the practice. What excites me even more about my role and what I get to do on a daily basis is talking to PR pros from all over the world about really how to use data to drive their workflow and to drive what they're doing in their day-to-day activity forward. And it's such an important part of the conversation, and I am so grateful to be able to do that on a daily basis. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our lovely panelists this morning. I'm so excited that they're here with us and that they've taken time out of their day to join us. I'm going to start with Kay-Ann Schoenemann. She is joining us from Washington, D.C. She is currently the Senior Vice President of Global Research and Analytics at Ketchum, a girl after my own heart, and she deals with analytics on a daily basis. Kay-Ann has had roughly 15 years experience in corporate comms, market research, and public affairs. She's worked with, hundreds of Fortune 100 companies on measurement and research campaigns. She's also an adjunct professor at Johns Hopkins University and an active member of industry-related organizations, including AMEC and the PRSA. So, Kay-Ann, real quick, tell us a little bit about your day-to-day and what that looks like at Ketchum.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, everyone, for joining us today. My role, as Rebecca said, is Senior Vice President of Ketchum's Global Research and Analytics Group. So in that role, I oversee all of our staff and teams essentially in North America outside of the New York office. So based in Washington, I oversee our South office, which is Atlanta and Dallas, Midwest, which is Chicago, and our West offices, LA and San Francisco. So in that capacity, work with the clients at Ketchum in a variety of industries and sectors.
So basically what you're saying is you're not busy at all.
No.
You're sitting around the office with your feet on your desk. No, thank you for that color to what you do on a daily basis. Next, I am moving over to the lovely Jennifer Witter, who is the CEO and founder of the Borland Group based in New York. Jennifer she founded the company, I think, roughly 13 years ago. She can correct me if I'm wrong, but Jennifer has been named one of the 10 most successful Black CEOs and entrepreneurs. She is the author of the Little Book of Big PR, which I would highly recommend. She is really an active advocate for women in the workplace, and particularly in terms of active duty service women. So she spends a tremendous amount of her time with clients, obviously, but also really giving back to the community. She has presented everywhere from the Pentagon to the UN. So I could go on. Her bio is about 900 pages long, but we don't have that much time. But Jennifer, please give us the overview about what your day-to-day is like at the Borland Group.
Rebecca, thanks so much, and thanks to your company and ComPro Biz for this opportunity. And, as a CEO, my day is always different. I'm juggling a lot of balls from managing the clients to managing staff. And what I do is that every day I put down on my to-do list the top 5 things that I need to get done that specific day, so it always changes. But some of the things that I do every day is business development, being in contact with my clients. We are a high-touch agency, and it's not as though being the CEO that I'm there at front and then never to be seen again. I like to develop relationships with my clients, and then with social media, which is critical for our clients and for my company as well. And I'm on a variety of different platforms looking at what's happening and applying it to my company as well as to my clients. So that's what I do day to day in a nutshell.
So I think it's safe to say that if someone were to hire the Borland Group, they could call you at 2 a.m. and on your cell phone and you'd pick up, or you'd be open to tweeting.
I'm sure. And it may sound sorry, but I sleep with my cell phone next to my bed, and it is on ring. Because this business that we're in, it's 24/7, and if you need us and it's an ASAP, we're there.
That is spoken like a true PR pro. Thank you for that, Jennifer. And last but certainly not least, we have Julia Monti, who is currently the VP of Global Communications at MasterCard, a company that most of you have probably heard of. Julie, I would like you to know that I do have a MasterCard, actually. And
fantastic.
and I wear it proudly. So Julia has been in the industry for over a decade, everything from corporate communications to the nonprofit side to the agency side. Previously, and this is actually really interesting to me personally, she was at Nielsen, really more in the television aspect of things. So I think her perspective is so unique in terms of this conversation. And I think that one of her areas of focus and something she talks about a lot is her interest in consumer behavior. So I think, again, a really unique perspective here. Julia, tell us a little bit about your day-to-day at MasterCard.
Yeah, so I think you hit on a really important point, right? We're not selling products, we're selling experiences, whether I was at Nielsen and now here at MasterCard. So I lead global communications for our core product team. So that's credit and debit, which I think most of you probably have one of those in your wallet. Most Americans have 4 on average. But it's also prepaid commercial cards, loyalty, and acceptance, because it's not just about having a card, it's about having a place that accepts that card. So I work really closely with small businesses, large businesses, people around the world, working closely with our chief product officer, our product leads, our regional communications team to really create powerful campaigns and tell the story in a way that is global and yet really local so that it is meaningful for people and matters. And those campaigns right now are really heavy on the peso model, right? So thinking about paid, earned, shared, owned. I've been at MasterCard for about a year and loving it.
Well, you're doing a great job because I do love my MasterCard.
Well, thank you.
I'm happy to tweet that out later. Before we jump into the slides and move forward to conversation, I just want to thank everyone for being here. I know that some of you may have been a little bit late, but we do appreciate your participation, and we are going to be taking questions at the end. So there is an opportunity to submit questions, and we're going to try to leave about 15 to 20 minutes at the end for those questions because it is a really important part of the conversation. I also wanted to mention that compared to my last panel, which was 3 gentlemen with barely any hair, we really have a great panel with amazing hair, which I'm really excited about because it's such a big thing. So thank you, ladies, for showing up, and I am so excited to jump in. So the first thing I wanted to kind of mention in terms of the conversation, just so everyone's on the same page, is really talking about, setting the tone for this. So the thing I always like to talk about with PR professionals, particularly ones coming up through the ranks, is if you don't understand your value, how will anyone else? So if we can't talk about what we're bringing to the table and what we're doing on a daily basis and how that translates to business value, it's very difficult to progress. It's very difficult to be empowered. It's very difficult to be a leader. So I think what happens a lot, and this is, by and large, the nature of the business of public relations, like Jennifer said, waking up at 2 in the morning and taking calls, it's very activity-based. And so a lot of times we end up just checking the box of the to-do list. We have a list of 150 things to do, clients banging down our door, our CEO asking us, why didn't we get a story in, U.S. News and World Report or CNN or whatever. And this approach is what I like to talk about as activity-based PR. And when we're mired in activity, we oftentimes don't step back to evolve into more proactive professionals. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to talk about how to do that, how to think about it a little bit differently. The second thing I wanted to bring up is, are we asking the right question? So, what does it mean to be an empowered, data-driven PR professional? Those are three very distinct things. So empowered means we can do things ourselves, we feel confident, we have a voice. Data-driven means that we have the data and the quantitative information to back up the information that we're bringing to our superiors. And a PR professional means, we're professional. This is our job. How do we become the best PR professional that we can be? I feel like I just said a quote from the Army, be the best you can be. Jennifer will appreciate that. So,
I did.
Ladies, yeah, I figured. So, Jennifer, let's start with you then. What does it mean, what does this mean to you in terms of being a next-gen PR approach, like what I like to call it, or next-gen PR leader? Talk about that for a minute.
Okay. Well, with the next-gen PR leader, it's that there are things that you need to know. And I think that it's important not to forget traditional methods, what I was taught in the early days of my career, because things are changing so much. But if you don't have the foundational approach to get to public relations and the solutions and the measurements that your clients are expecting you to have, then it's all for naught. So we should never forget about the traditional methods, like building a media list, creating the EdCal. But the one thing I always say to my staff is that you always must be able to defend what you're doing, and that goes back to the qualitative part. If your client is asking you, why are we going to this publication as opposed to that media outlet? Why are we on Facebook rather than LinkedIn? You are going to need to be able to defend what you are doing. And when I say defend, I don't mean it in an aggressive manner, but you need to be able to explain to them being the client, why you're doing and why it's of benefit to them. And then one other quick thing is that for all next-gen PR leaders is that while you need to keep your eye on what's happening now, you also have to look ahead and know what those emerging trends are, and being able to connect it, if possible, with your client. So there's a lot going on, but I would say about the traditional methods, keeping your eye on the ball, and knowing what those trends are that will impact your client and how you can bring it to their attention and how it will benefit them, that is absolutely critical.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, too, in terms of connecting, being able to connect all those dots, because that is really, in essence, what we're doing is we're dot connecting. And the only way you can do that effectively is with data. Yeah. So that's why it's important. Julia, what are your thoughts on this? What does being a next-gen PR leader mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's really important to think that as next-gen PR pros, we're talking to the next generation of consumers, right? Everybody is evolving, and we have to evolve, too. So 80% of Americans carry a smartphone today. And 1 in 5 millennials doesn't even look at their computer for the Internet, right? They're getting all of their news on that mobile device. So we need to think in that context and make sure that the content that we're putting out, the news that we're sharing, the channels that we're looking at are meaningful to them, really hitting the people where they are, where they're going to absorb it, and where they're going to love it. I think Jennifer did a great job talking about these core values because, honestly, a lot of what we do is about relationships. And that's not going to change. In fact, it's even more important because you have to stand out from all this clutter. I think we have to evolve. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I Skype with my 94-year-old grandmother. So people of all ages are evolving, and we need to understand that, we can get them the news that we want, even though it's going to be highly fragmented. It's about telling that story in a way that matters.
Yeah, all great points. Kay-Ann, what are your thoughts there?
Sure. In my position, one of the things that I love the most is managing a team that is across the country and is diverse in experience. And I have a lot of the next-gen PR leaders, what I would call, in my group. And what I see is that they're educated, they're passionate, and they're hungry for both in the way that they service their clients and staying ahead of trends, and for their thirst for knowledge and to really have experiences and cutting-edge tactics that they can try out. But with all of that, it's grounded in data, and that's what I love. Quantitative data, qualitative data that they use as a foundation for anything that they will deploy on behalf of a client or an initiative or an effort, and not just facts and figures and that, but really insights. A lot of data that relates to, as Julia was saying, the consumer. How do we tap into them? In what platforms? What methods? And all this data that we have, what is the real human truth that can have some connectivity and really show a change, an outcome in the effort that we have? And most importantly, tying any PR that we're doing to business results or organizational results, depending on the client. So not just we got X amount of impressions, or we deployed this effort on YouTube and saw this amount of eyeballs. So what? What was the outcome of that? Did we move the target audience? Did we impact them? Did we drive them to do something? And I see that this next-gen PR leader is really cutting edge, but grounded in that foundational data and using that to their advantage.
KN, it's Jennifer. I so agree with that. And sometimes it's not the quantity, but the quality. You could
Absolutely.
have 10,000 Twitter followers,
right.
but if 8,000 of them are bought, what's the purpose? But if you have 2,000 core people who are following your client, who are influencers, that with one tweet, it will carry out to multiples, to the audience that you want to impact, that is critical. So it's sometimes not the huge numbers, but the right numbers. And with the next-gen PR leader, they need to know that sometimes quality trumps quantity.
Yeah, I would say 100% of the time quality trumps quantity. And I think we talk about this a lot at Air PR and just in building the product. How do we surface information that's impactful to the customer, and that's
right.
where they can actually make a business decision, and then, kind of hiding all of the ancillary and unimportant information, which they can see if they want it. But, this goes to impact. Each one of you talked about impact, and I think this is a great segue to talk about, if we want to have impact, we have to be thinking about these things in a different way. We can't be thinking about clicks. We can't be thinking about pages. What we have to think about is, how are we critically looking at this? How are we analyzing it? And then how are we making decisions from a foundational, grounded place that has meaning and that is, that drives to business goals? So jumping into this next part of the conversation, which is really where we're going to stay for probably the next 10 to 15 minutes, I actually released an article on the Bulldog Reporter that I shared with all of you earlier. And the point that I was making is that if we don't have these character qualities as PR leaders, then it's going to be very difficult for us to actually lead and actually drive conversation about what's important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of direct these questions to you, and we're going to talk about these different qualities. So the things that I think are important, just after having been in the industry for so long, is that we are self-aware. And basically what that means is how you fit into the organization. So PR, if we want to stay in a silo, we're going to think like a silo. And what is required now is that we think like an integrated part of the organization. And so when you think like an integrated part of the organization, what you do is you figure out, how do I relate to marketing and advertising and sales and everybody else? So that's number one. Number two is data-driven. So what this means is your measurement and your analytics focus. Opinionated, I mean, that's obvious, but what it means, at least from where I stand, is that you have a voice and you're speaking up for what you believe. You're not afraid to say, hey, this isn't working. Here's the data to prove it. Here's what we need to do. Being thoughtful, and what this means to me is thinking outside the box and applying critical thought. I think so much of what we get caught up in is, just like I said before, the activity-based stuff that's really not useful. So are you really thinking about what you're saying? Don't send a press release to a journalist that doesn't write about, food. If they write about technology and you're sending them a pitch about food, like, it's just lazy. And I think that this is happening. I get pitched 20 times a day on topics that I don't write about. And I get where it's coming from. I get that there's a mandate, but it's not thoughtful. And it's like delete and blacklist right away. The last one is a little bit more elusive, but this concept of being brave, which I think gets talked about a lot, particularly in women leadership circles, is not being afraid. And what this means to me is not being afraid to find another gig, or not being afraid to get fired if you stand up for something that you believe is fundamentally wrong. If an agency is telling you, yeah, go download a list of 500 people and send them all a press release with no context, you should literally walk out the door because it's not going to do anything for your career. It's not going to empower you. It means that they're not rooted in data, and it means that no one's going to respect you as a PR professional. And that career, that reputation will stay with you for your entire career. So I think that we have to think like, people who own the organization and how we do this, and you have to be very, I would say, confident in a sense to find another place to go that is more supportive of, things that matter. So I actually want to direct this first question to Kayanne in terms of being self-aware. So I guess the specific question is, what is different about how PR Pro fits now into an organization versus even 5 to 10 years ago? Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I would say that a PR Pro now has to be flexible more than ever. And what I mean by that is with how you work, how you flex for your clients. You could be operating for a client that used to have a nice, healthy budget, and they might have some market mix modeling that says that PR is not coming through, and all of a sudden your budget is slashed. How do you adjust and work and show impact on their behalf? How do you really be flexible, both for yourself with the people you work with and your clients? But I would also say that you have to innovate. And I don't mean that you have to create a new product, but you have to keep up with the times at the bare minimum, and if anything, stay ahead. So 5, 10 years ago, Facebook was brand new. Twitter didn't exist 10 years ago. If you're in a room and you hear a colleague say something like, oh, I don't do social media, or I don't get that, or I'm a Luddite, that's a red flag because in 2016, the social and the impact of digital media in all of communications, you have to be there in the right ways and flex and understand for your clients, or else you're only telling one sliver of your story to your target audience. So you have to be able to know and understand multiple channels and how to use them for your clients, but also in the flexible way, flexible with how we work with colleagues. I'd say 5, 10 years ago, we were all in an office and all, kept pretty solid hours. Very, PR is always on the top 5 list of most stressful jobs. Yes. Now, I work with colleagues. They can be anywhere in the globe and really in an office, at home, in an incubator, and so flexible in how you can present and project, be good on the phone as well as in the room, be able to keep up with your email as well as pick up the phone when needed. But really, that's how I think things have evolved, both in technology and how we work with each other in the interpersonal ways.
Yeah, and Julia, follow up on that, because we did talk about that, your thoughts on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, so I've spent my career, as you mentioned, both on the agency side and in-house. And I think you face the same challenges in both places, right? I think everyone thinks that because they can write an email, they can be a communicator. But in today's world, it's so much more than that. And PR pros really need to be a trusted advisor. But that's a stature that we have to earn and we have to demand, right? And part of that is by being highly accountable and by being business-driven in everything that we do. So we are absolutely not a deli counter where the business can come and say, I have this product launch or news or partnership or whatever, and I need a press release tomorrow. That's not strategic. It's not living up to the value of PR. And I've certainly seen that happen in my career, and I've certainly seen the PR pros that can take it up a notch and push back. And I think that's what the business really needs.
Yeah, that's a great segue into this concept of being opinionated and having a voice. And Jennifer, I want you to jump in here and talk about, particularly if you're working on behalf of a client, why is it necessary to have a voice and a point of view, and what are some of those tactics for getting heard?
You know, I absolutely love the question because I speak a lot about this to women's groups. And having a voice is critical in getting the next gen PR leader to move ahead in his or her career, because a lot of this is based on email communication. But when you're meeting with the client or you're communicating with them face-to-face, it's important to use your actual physical voice in order to be heard, because you're not only selling your ideas and your thoughts, you're also selling yourself and what you know. And I think that it's important for us to be able to say, yes, I agree, or no, I disagree, and to have that strength and move forward and be able to use one's voice to get that point of view. And I think that for a lot of young people today, that they are using their voice. When I first started, you did not disagree with individuals. You just went ahead and agreed and the like. Today, nowadays, there is much more flexibility in hearing from the younger generation. And I think that's important because millennials are so tapped into so many different things. And it's like reverse mentoring where you learn from them. So for somebody who's my age, I welcome people coming to me and speaking and telling me what they are learning and what they're doing. With that being said, you have to be able to quantify it. You have to show me the facts, because there's so much happening with us today that you could spend 10 hours in social media alone. You have to explain to me why this is important, how it's going to advance the client, and then being and going to the client and making them understand, because we should never, ever think that the client automatically assumes what we know. We need to break it down and have them realize this is what we're going to do, this is why we're going to do it, and this is how it's going to benefit you. And I always say to my clients at the beginning of the relationships, I would love to be your friend, but that's not my capacity. And there will be times when I am going to disagree with you, and you have to accept that disagreement. Not you have to follow me, but just know I am going to tell you when I disagree, so that when you make a decision, it is going to be fully informed, and then you can move on. I am not doing my job if I don't do that. So I think that finding one's voice means knowing your stuff, having the strength to voice it, having the data behind it to back it up, and last but not least, making sure that that you communicate it in a way that's understandable to those who are outside the PR realm, to whether your client is a credit card or a business consultant, how it's going to help them.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and you make some really great points, and I think within our organization, I tell the people that directly report to me, and if you have a thought about something, you really strongly believe in it, I will always listen, but what will help your case is build a group around you of people who also agree. So I think this idea of also getting buy-in from other people who have influence is really important, and I think that it makes a case stronger. So it's just a little, kind of a hint and a tactic that if you are, not feeling confident about voicing your opinion, go to a couple other people, because I think a lot of it's just like communication. If you're thinking this is really weird, and then you go to a couple other people like, yeah, this is really weird. And if you get other people that are thinking the same thing, it gives you that confidence to build your case, and then say, hey, this is why we think this, and here's what we think we should do, and here's the solution. So not just saying, hey, I don't like that. That's not useful.
Oh, no, yeah.
So to be a leader, you have to say, I don't agree with this. Here's why. Here are the facts, and here's the solution that I propose.
Exactly, and that's what I say to my staff and with the next-gen PR leaders. What you just said, they really need to listen to that, because we don't want to overlook great ideas because you're not feeling confident enough to say them. And you know what? There'll be times when it doesn't work, that you'll fall flat on your face, and the sign of a true leader is being able to get up, dust herself off, and move forward. As I say to my staff, there's no such thing as a mistake. The problem is not learning from your error, and nobody is 100% perfect all the time.
Right. We're like 95% perfect, but that's...
I would say 99.
99 is fine. Ann, really quickly, let's jump back to the data-driven conversation. And why is this so? Because, as research and analytics focused, why is this so important? And why does the thinking around this need to shift simply from, I got, 5 hits of media to things like lead generation and mapping to business goals? Talk about how you do that within Ketchum and why that's important.
Sure.
In order to be a leader. Yeah.
So here at Ketchum, our approach to really showing impact and measurement has several tracks. The first and most basic is showing the output, so the media hits, the placements, that basic level of data. The next level is the outcome of that. So what did we get? So we delivered the right messages to the right audiences on behalf of our client or ourselves or whatever the issue is. Did we move that audience? Did we compel them to action? Where our clients are, and our most sophisticated clients are, is even one step beyond that. And it's, so now what is the impact on my organization? So if you're a company that sells products, is it linked to sales? If you're an organization that your goal is to find, more employees or keep employees engaged and happy, if that's one of your issues, if it's to drive stock price, did these communication efforts achieve that goal, and how do we measure that? And why that's so important is because both our clients are being evaluated internally on this metric to see how effectively they're doing their job and how effectively we're partnering to do that, and they're also making financial decisions and expenditure decisions and future business decisions based on these efforts. So it's so important to go beyond simply we got a placement in the Wall Street Journal or, we're in this magazine or and really what is the impact of it, and not just on our target audience, but on our organization. Because at the end of the day, when a decision comes to evaluate the effectiveness of your PR efforts or your fully integrated peso model, the last thing you want is your work stream to be on the chopping block because you didn't articulate the value and the impact of your work. So really for many of our clients, it's a journey. Some of them may be at that first step still on media hits, and we help them progress and understand so that they're never in that situation where they have a boss coming to them or they're asked the question, so what was the impact, and they can't answer it.
Can I get your official on-the-record thoughts about impressions, please?
Yes.
How those are useful or not. We've had this offline, but I really think that people need to hear this from you.
I think impressions are meaningless. They are inconsistent with how they are computed. There are organizations who do not follow. Some of you may be familiar with the Barcelona principles. Those are the guiding principles for how to measure PR. Some organizations use multipliers, so they get impressions and they multiply it by how many more people they think are actually seeing it. And it's led to a sentiment of distrust in many of the C-suites that we work with, where they hear these billions and billions of numbers and they have no idea what the actual impact of that impression is. So going beyond impressions and taking a look at, well, what's the outcome and then what's the impact on our business is much more meaningful than racking up a tally of numbers that are meaningless.
Yeah, and here's a really good very recent personal story. I just met with the head of comms for H&R Block, Gene King, in Kansas City a few weeks ago, and we were showing him, the Air PR technology, and he had pulled out a report. And I think that what he said to me is that, all these numbers are really great. And then I see one impression number that says 7 billion something, and it blacks out everything that I've just seen because I think it's ridiculous. So it's like what that does is it devalues the other things that are being reported on. So just think about that as a PR professional. Just question those things. When you see 7 billion is more than there are people on the planet. So it's like, think about that for a second and think about that before you send that number off to somebody, because it's your reputation. Own it and know that it's not going to actually help your case. So I'll get off my soapbox. And Julia, I want to talk to you about this concept of being thoughtful. So how can PR pros think about their job as a creative endeavor and not just activity-based? And I think particularly for someone in a consumer environment, this is really important because you're trying to emotionally connect with your audience. So what are some of those tactics you you can use for getting yourself to think outside the box?
Yeah. So this is something a boss told me many years ago, and he said, in PR, you can be busy every day. You can work really, really hard, and you can accomplish nothing. And I think we all have those days, right, where we're like, oh, my goodness, I got so much done. And then you actually look at your to-do list and you think, how did I really drive the needle? I don't know that I did. So I think it's important every day to kind of think about those bigger picture goals that you have. And also, going back to what you just said, I have this kind of gut check that I do, and this is kind of a jargony term, but I like to ask if what I'm doing is actionable for the audience. Right? Mm-hmm. So what if you were reading an article, if you were seeing a tweet, if you had downloaded a report, what is the action that we want from you, and how do we measure that? So it's not just about the impression of what you're seeing with that first piece of content, but also ultimately the end goal. And I think data is really, really important, and it's not just about measuring success. That is critically important because I think we all know that we have to drive ROI, prove our value, and show the results in numbers because that's what people respond to these days. But I think we also have to think about data when it comes to strategy and informing strategy. So, there are 6,000 tweets every second and 56 million blog posts every month on WordPress alone. So how do we cut through that clutter, and how do we understand which of our tactics that we are planning on for a campaign are really going to matter? And so thinking about data and informing that strategy, and then also using data to tell stories. So I've been at MasterCard and also at Nielsen, so just think about the wealth of data that I've had at my fingertips, which is so fun to play with, right? The stories that you can tell when you have actual data. And it's just been delightful. And, one of my first projects at Nielsen was rehabilitating the cross-platform report, which is now called the Total Audience Report. And we looked at, how are people viewing video on mobile and online and on TV. And this is a time when the business is still reeling from these changes and couldn't figure out, what this meant for them. And we were driving that conversation forward using data. Then, of course, we could measure that success using data. But it was this full picture, really, of, being thoughtful and informed with our strategies and actions.
Yeah, no, that's great, and all great points there. I think it's just on a high level, it's always step back and say, what I am doing, is it actionable? I think that's a great way to kind of, it's a great capstone question for any sort of activity that you're doing. And I think it's sometimes really takes you 10 steps backwards because it's hard to think about those things when you're being told, to do a million things. So that, I think, is a great lead into this next concept of bravery and being able to push back and being able to say, no, I want to be a thoughtful person. I don't want to just be a hamster in a wheel. So Jennifer, tell us maybe a story about how you've been brave and perhaps with a client or even a boss in your former life and maybe how it turned out, great because of the fact that you stood up for something that you believed in. Jennifer, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I was thinking about that question. I'm going to relate it to something within my own company. And I had a client who shall remain nameless, and she was one of my first clients, and I represented her for 11 years. And she was a very difficult person. She was known as that. And throughout my entire career, not just with the Borland Group, but with other agencies, I had a reputation of getting difficult clients. And I told her on more than one occasion that her behavior toward her staff and others would not hold water with me. And I said the way she treated them, she did not have the permission to do that. And about a year and a half ago, something happened, and she was screaming at me in public. Her face was red and contorted, and it was something that was out of my control. And I tried to make a situation that wasn't bad at all into one that was more of her liking, and it didn't work. And she was screaming and ranting and raging. And the next day I contacted her. Remember, she had been warned multiple times not to do that kind of behavior toward me, and I resigned the account. And I explained to her exactly why. And I could not move forward because it would have been a loss of self-respect for myself. With this client, we got her wonderful hits. She was on CNN. She was on Bloomberg TV. She was on the cover of the New York Times. We got her first-tier speaking engagement. I got clients because of the work that I did for her, which was exceptional. But I could not, with myself, continue to represent her because of her inexcusable behavior that I warned her about. And she was one of my highest paying accounts. So it was a chunk out of my own income. Now, what happened is that after I resigned the account, there was like a freedom. There was like a lifting of spirits because I no longer had this weight on me, and the door opened up to other accounts that I truly enjoyed working with, who were appreciative of the work that I and my staff did, and this would not have happened if I did not sever ties with that client. So sometimes with bravery, there comes a monetary loss, but you know the old saying, when the door closes, another one opens. Sometimes you have to close the door hard in order for it to fly open and allow you to walk through to much better things.
That's such a great story. I think it is really important for everyone to kind of hear things like that, because whether it's firing a client, if you have your own agency or work at an agency, or you're working at a brand that's just doing things that are vehemently opposed to your belief system, your value system, your soul-sucking, toxic type of behavior, it's just never good. And you can never actually become an effective leader in any capacity if you have those types of people around you. It so weights on you, as you said. So thanks for sharing that story. Before we move to the Q&A, I want to quickly go through, we have about 15 minutes. I had asked y'all to bring resources in terms of some tools and conferences and things like that. So, Kayan, why don't we start with you? So what is your favorite PR tech tool at the moment?
I love, this may be old-fashioned, but Google Analytics, and I can stay in the analytics platform. And this is not something, I'm not our digital expert or anything, but I think there's an importance to understanding on the back end why people are coming to your online destination, where they're staying, how they're getting there. And for a data person like myself, it never gets old. And I love manipulating the data and looking at, what's really driving traffic, what are people sharing, how are they getting to sites, and that's just, it's an oldie but a goodie for me.
Yes, and what are some of your favorite newer PR tech tools that maybe rhyme with, Dare PR?
I love Air PR, but you're jumping ahead because I was going to say people who I follow and thought leaders, if you're not reading what Rebecca is writing on multiple platforms from Huffington Post and on, really she's ahead, and as is their technology. It's right in that spot where our advanced clients are, where they need to show value and impact of PR. So absolutely, the oldie but goodie, the Google Analytics for my personal enjoyment, but for client needs, absolutely. Showing that impact is so important.
Kayan, thanks. Your check is in the mail for that plug, by the way. Thank you so much. So, Julia, what about for you, any conferences that you find useful these days in terms of the PR stuff?
Yeah, so I love, this is going to maybe sound bad, but I love the industry conferences that are maybe outside of PR that really help immerse me in the industry in which I'm working at the time. So both at Nielsen and here at MasterCard, CES has been a really big one. So understanding the trends, the technologies that are coming in, next year, the year after. And even like Advertising Week, for people who are in New York, there are so many sessions that you can sit in on and just absorb. Really, really great stuff, thought leaders from across the industry.
I think you're the only person on the planet that I've heard ever says like CES.
Well, I mean, it is Vegas, so there's a downside.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. How about blogs or books related to PR or communications that you follow or read or think are great resources that our lovely audience can maybe jot down?
Yeah, so one that is, again, not totally traditional PR, but How to Win Friends and Influence People is one of those books that I think everyone should read. It's just about, how to connect with people at a human level, and it's really great.
Yeah, I love that book. Jennifer, how about people you follow, thought leaders, besides, reading your own stuff, obviously? What other thought leaders in the industry or outside the industry that you learn from on a regular basis?
There were a couple of them. One of them is Chelsea Crost, and she is a millennial thought leader. I came across her on Twitter, and, what she tweets about and what she writes about, it's fascinating to me because she opens the door as to what is happening now and what is going to be happening in the future relating to millennials. And she has a weekly Millennial Talk Twitter chat that I always try to get in on because I pull so much information about what is happening with that group of individuals that will be impacting my business. And then the next thought leader that I follow, and it's not going to come as a surprise to anyone, it's Gary Vaynerchuk. The man is exhausting to me. I follow him and, what he's doing, and I think that he is one of the few individuals who has like 30 hours in a 24-hour day. And, just what he is, Snapchatting, Instagramming, Facebooking about, putting up on YouTube and how he, crushes all the data and puts the information out there and knows what's going to happen on the market even before the market knows what's going to happen. It's phenomenal what he is doing on the social media universe and how it's impacting so many different types of communities across the board. So those are two people that I follow quite regularly.
Yeah, I find Gary highly obnoxious, yet probably highly useful to some capacity. I just haven't quite figured it out yet. So,
it truly is. He was profiled on CNBC recently, and, going from the wine company to social media, and the two don't have anything in connection with either. But the fact that he is able to build this and to, as I believe it was KM who said, to break through the clutter and to grasp the audience that his clients want to have, that's not easy in a day where I feel that we are being bombarded to the nth degree with information.
Oh yeah, I mean to be able to do that is certainly an art. Well, thank you guys for your suggestions. Just for those of you that are tuned in, we are going to have the slide deck available after, and also we'll include. There's more resources. We don't have time to get into them. We'll include some of these resources because I think that would be really useful just to have kind of at your fingertips, and can certainly be tweeting that stuff out, but we'll include it in the deck. I want to jump over now with the last remaining few minutes to the Q&A. So I think that's something we talked about kind of previous to the panel, this conversation around diversity in PR. I think that diversity is such an interesting subject, and certainly for an empowered PR professional, understanding how this conversation fits. In the tech community, it's a constant focus because of women in tech being highly underrepresented. The same on an executive level for the S&P. But in PR, you never really hear that conversation, or at least not publicly. And so I wanted to go around the room and get everyone's literally a minute, not over a minute, thoughts on that, so we can jump to some other questions. But what are you doing, both personally and at your organization, to drive those conversations around diversity, and how are you tactically implementing diversity programs? So just 30 seconds to 45 seconds. KM, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, I'm excited that last month Ketchum announced that they restructured their Global Leadership Council. So that is our global governing board that used to be called Executive Committee. And that composition is 20 leaders of our organization, 10 men and 10 women, representing various geographies, profit centers, et cetera. What's so exciting about that is many of us as women in PR, there's a lot of women in PR, but the closer you get to the C-suite, slowly starts to diminish. So I think what's so exciting about that is that there is gender parity there as well as global representation. It's certainly a first step in the right direction, and there's a lot of other internal diversity and inclusion initiatives that we have, but it's something that I know myself and other women at Ketchum saw, loved, and applauded, and are excited for more future announcements to come.
Awesome. Jennifer, what about you? Thoughts on that?
In terms of diversity, the fact that I am a woman of color really resonates because I have to be truthful. In my 30-plus year career, I have worked with very few people of color at the executive level, and with clients, it's been primarily Caucasian. And I think that just by being there and representing well and showing that we can do the job just as well as anyone else is an eye-opener, because there are many people out there who have not had the interactions with someone who is black. And with one of my previous jobs where I was an executive and my team was all white, somebody said to me that not only did they not have any black friends, but they never reported to a black. So it's just doing those things that are one step at a time and realizing, whether I like it or not, that I'm representative of a whole rather than an individual, and to always do my best.
Great wise words there. Julia, how about you?
Yeah, this is such an important issue, and I think something we gloss over sometimes in communications because we are so diverse in some ways. But it's essential that we have the right voices in the mix. There is unconscious bias at work that we don't even realize. So to be able to speak to diverse audiences, we need to have diverse speakers and thought leaders. I've been really lucky. Nielsen was tremendously diverse. Here at MasterCard, we are really pushing for inclusive growth around the world, and it's something that, empowering women is something we just think is so important to driving societies forward. As a company, our CEO has come out saying that, we can say that women and men are paid the same here. And, I don't want to say that the job is done for us, because absolutely we need more women at all levels. We need people of color at all levels. But I feel really happy about what's been done thus far, and I think we'll continue that journey.
That's great to hear. It seems like everyone is really kind of thinking about it. I think that's really what it takes. People thinking about it, people being thoughtful, and then prioritizing it, which is probably the most important thing, because if you're not prioritizing something, it doesn't actually happen. One last question from the audience, and Tayan, you did mention Google Analytics, but maybe for the rest of you, what are your favorite tools to measure the effectiveness of your outreach? What are some, and this goes back to the PR tech tool question, but Julie, maybe start with you. What are you using over there at MasterCard?
Yeah, so we are using Synthesio, which is a tool that we're really excited about it because it gives us an integrated view across all of our platforms. So owned, earned, paid, shared, right? It really lets us look at the reach and our share of voice across all of those different channels. And something that we're really striving for as a company is to move from social listening to social intelligence, so that we're able to make really smart decisions based on the data that comes our way, rather than just having this deluge of information and that we can't quite figure out how to use it. Synthesio has been a pretty cool tool for us.
Jennifer, how about you?
We rely primarily upon Google Analytics, but a couple of my clients are very much focused on the Facebook platform. So pulling the information from that and seeing who is, responding to the postings, how they're reacting, and then pulling together postings that will generate greater involvement from our followers and to grow that engagement has really worked out well. So those are the two that we're currently invested in.
Great. And Kay-Ann, any other besides Google Analytics that you are using over there at Ketchum?
Yeah, absolutely. We, as a global agency, and we customize based on our clients' needs. We work with a number of monitoring services, like Julia shared. We really take into account the full peso model, so everything from Gorkana to Salience to Cision, and AirPR exploring for some clients as well. Really based on the needs of our clients, we customize a recommendation and work with platforms. I will say there are some we do not work with because we do not think that their data and that there's integrity behind their data and the way that they're calculating as well. But I didn't name any of those.
Yeah. Well, we're going to steer clear of that for the moment.
Absolutely, but really check into the back end on the data that you're getting, because anyone that's pushing you hard on impressions, just walk away.
Yeah, exactly, or AVEs or any of those kind of things. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your insights and your input. For those of you that are tuning in, if you would like a demo, we're happy to do that. An AirPR demo. And again, thank you to Compro and Onstream. I really appreciate everyone's time, and hopefully you will tune in for the next one. So have a great rest of your day. And don't forget that, being an empowered PR leader does require data and certainly asserting your voice. So that's the news here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. This does conclude today's conference. We thank you for your participation. You may disconnect your lines at this time and have a great day.